Hey everyone, so today I'm here with Natan Nagar. He's a mortgage broker and we are going to answer your questions about mortgages here in Israel. So the first question is, how much is a down payment?
So down payments are going to be at least 25%, and that's assuming that both spouses have Israeli citizenship. If none of the spouses have Israeli citizenship, then you need to have at least 50% because banks are only allowed to give you up to 50% financing. You can go with non-banking lenders as well, but that's a separate story. And if one of the spouses has citizenship but the other one doesn't, then you take the average. So you can get up to 62.5% financing and you need 37.5% down payment. Just keep in mind that there's going to be other closing costs.
So how much is the monthly payment?
So monthly payments are generally going to be around a third of your net income, after taxes. So let's just say you're making $10,000 a month after taxes. And after you've deducted for any expenses like car loans, prior mortgages, whatever it is, you're going to be paying around 1/3. So let's say around $3,300 for your monthly payments.
How long can a mortgage be for?
Banking mortgages can be up to 30 years. There are non-banking mortgages and those can go up to 40 years. But generally speaking, it makes sense to stay with a banking mortgage unless there are extenuating circumstances.
Is there an average term length?
That's a good question. Generally, mortgages will be 20 to 25 years, but because you can have a couple different sub-loans, you can actually have some parts of the mortgage that are going to end earlier and some that are going to take the full 30 years.
Is there a discount for Olim?
So there is a discount for Olim. You can actually calculate your eligibility. On my business card, there is a link for the calculator, and it's a subsidized government loan, so the interest rates are generally a bit lower, but it's fixed rate and indexed to inflation. It's not always the best to use, but it is important to take into account when you're building your mortgage.
And I'm going to attach his digital business card to this post. Can you really lock in a rate? Because people have heard that they are pretty variable here.
Yeah, so this is probably a good time to kind of get into what the different sub-loans are. Generally speaking, you can have a loan that's fixed or variable. And even within variable, it can vary on a monthly basis, yearly basis, every 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, even up to 10 years. So there's a lot of flexibility there. And you can also have it be indexed to inflation or not have an index to inflation. Those are kind of the things that you're looking into. And the more that you have sub-loans that are either indexed to inflation and or variable rates, those are subject to change and your monthly payments can then fluctuate.
Is there a prepayment penalty?
Okay, so piggybacking off of the different types of subloans, those that have a more fixed rate have a higher prepayment penalty, and those that have a more variable rate have a lower prepayment penalty. Sometimes the variable rate can vary so often, for example, once a month or once a year, that there is no prepayment penalty, but it's not really a yes or no question as much as a spectrum or how much of a prepayment penalty you're going to incur.
As of February 2024, what do average interest rates look like?
So in loans that are not indexed to Israeli inflation, average interest rates are around 5%. Those that are indexed to Israeli inflation are going to be around 2.5% to 3%. And while that may sound better, because right now inflation is around 3%, that means that you're essentially getting 2.5%, 3%, and an additional 3% on top of that. It can get a bit complicated, so any questions, feel free to give me a call.
Can retirees get a mortgage here?
So the short answer for that is yes, and there are a few different options for that. Those really need to be dealt with on a case-by-case basis, so definitely feel free to reach out, but yes.
What is מחיר למשתכן?
So מחיר למשתכן is a government program where there is a subsidized apartment being sold. The chances of winning it are pretty low, but if you do win, it's kind of like winning the lottery. You got a massive discount off of your first home. Keep in mind that most people do not win. It pays to sign up for it, but not necessarily to wait around for it.
Do they offer home equity lines of credit or loans once you have enough credit in your house?
Yeah, so you can get, depending on what the purpose of your loan is, you can get up to 50% of the value of your home or even up to 70%. And that, of course, you have to take into account what your current mortgage is. So let's say you have 1,000,000 shekels and you already have a 200,000 shekel mortgage and you're going for 50%, you only have 300,000 remaining.
Can you get pre-approval?
You can. Sometimes you don't have a choice. You have to get pre-approval because the seller is only willing to sell if you have the approval. That shows that you're a serious buyer. But it also makes sense to get pre-approval so you know what you're actually able to get before you sign on the dotted line and corner yourself into a purchase contract.
What's the process look like for getting a mortgage?
So getting a mortgage, and this is true around the world and definitely in Israel as well, you have to show your income, you have to prove to the bank what your financial situation looks like, and depending on what your situation looks like, they're going to give you a mortgage. It really depends if you're using income from here in Israel or from the States, for example, or another Anglo country that's outside of Israel. You're going to have to show either your pay slips or your tax returns, and you're going to have to show the full extent of your monthly expenses. And because it's a lot of documentation and because things in Israel take longer than they should take, the process probably is going to be at least 3 months long, start to finish, and potentially a bit longer. When it comes to mortgages, it does make sense to start earlier, initiate the process, as opposed to showing up late.
I heard you can have guarantors. What does that mean?
So that means that your aspirations for a mortgage are not backed up by your financial situation, or in layman's terms, you need to make more money. A workaround for that is you can actually have close family relatives, meaning either siblings or parents can have children join as guarantors for the mortgage. You get to use their income as well. You can have guarantors from overseas as well as here in Israel. And they just help to add to your financial backing so that the bank feels more comfortable giving you a mortgage.
What are the nuances between buying from a contractor versus a previous owner?
So when you're buying from a contractor, the price that you're signing up for is not necessarily going to be your final purchase price, and that's because of the builder's index or Madad Sumot HaBniya, and your initial down payment is probably going to be higher than when you're buying from a previous owner. When you're buying from a previous owner, it may also be worth it to do an early appraisal and get that done before you actually sign on the purchase agreement. But honestly, the best thing to do is really to have a mortgage broker aware of your situation so that you can be properly guided.
When should you reach out to a mortgage broker?
Once you're sure and you're serious that you're going to be buying, it makes sense to reach out beforehand so that we can set a budget and you actually know what you're shopping for, as opposed to endlessly window shopping and possibly getting burnt out. And that really is going to be a couple months before you actually end up buying the home that you're going to buy.
Can you buy from abroad without stepping foot in Israel?
You can. You can take care of all the steps of the mortgage. So that means purchasing and also getting the mortgage by actually appointing an attorney with a power of attorney. And once you have a POA, they can do all the steps for you. Sometimes that involves the Israeli consulate, but there are workarounds for that.
Well, thank you so much for answering our questions. And if you have any more questions for Natan, you can find his contact information below and follow Ozrim Olim for more.